Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another video. This is our Southern California first time home buyer market update for January 15th, 2021. My name is Stephen Mead. I'm with Domicile Real Estate, where we are on a mission to help California's renters become homeowners. And this is our Southern California first time home buyer stats. So these statistics are calculated for Orange and Los Angeles counties, and they are specifically suited to the entry-level markets and entry-level first-time home buyers. So without further ado, I'm going to get into the stats. But right before I do, obviously the thing that we are looking for this week is, where are our inventory levels going? Are they starting to head up? And is demand following that heightened inventory? And we actually have answers to those questions this week to see what kind of spring it looks like we are going to have. So please join me and we'll kind of go through our stats. So our first thing is, this is our closed prices. And before I jump into these, I think it is very important to remember something, to remind everyone that closed prices are based on contracts from a month ago. So that means that the home prices you see here are based upon escrows that happen in sort of that beginning to middle of December. That is typically not a super active time of year. And in fact, this year things were still hot, but they were not quite as hot as they were prior to the Thanksgiving holiday. So if we take out our pointer here and we take a look, we saw that these numbers actually slid a little bit in our entry level single family home, which is again three bed, 2 bath. We see that they slid slightly, but they've kind of evened out. I'm very curious to see what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks when we start getting numbers that are based on January contracts, right? Are we going to see this number kind of start that upward rise again that we normally see in the springtime? And when is that rise going to happen? If you remember in 2020, normally that March rise in prices didn't happen in March. It actually happened in May and June. If we look here on our condo stats, it's kind of interesting that they actually crested a little bit later and then fell again as we kind of came in here. They've fallen just a little bit in the past week. We don't have a huge number of sales, so sometimes that can skew these numbers a little bit. But again, remember, these are contracts negotiated a month ago. But doing that based on affordability, if we're using these numbers, which are kind of the best that we have for pricing, rates actually took a jump this week. So I don't know if anyone's been paying attention. But rates definitely jumped. They are still very much sub 3% for well-qualified buyers. So I mean, they jumped in that sense. They jumped slightly, but I think for kind of a market that's seen super low rates for so long, that was a little bit unexpected and a little bit jarring. If you look at our monthly payment, you can see what happened is that even though our median price fell, our payment actually went up slightly. Now, if you look at our chart again, we've got the middle of 2018, middle of 2019, and then we kind of jump ahead here to the end of 2020 and then through the last couple of weeks. We are still better than we were around that Thanksgiving timeframe in terms of our single family homes. And if you look here, still cheaper than 2.5 years ago or so. And it's actually a similar story for the entry level condos. My favorite part of this chart is that this really gives people a sense of historic perspective. And I think in weeks like this, where interest rates do go up, it's important to take a look at that and really kind of evaluate, your home ownership opportunity and think about that versus sort of like, where were we 2.5 years ago? And the fact is, on a payment for payment level, if you're an entry level buyer, you are actually still in a better position today than you would have been 2.5 years ago. And in fact, in our condo market, you're actually better by a good amount. I mean, you're better by over $200 a month, almost a 10% difference in monthly payment. Not quite as strong on our single family market. That's a little bit more competitive, but still cheaper than 2.5 years ago. And just as a reminder, we kind of base this on 5% down, including mortgage insurance, including taxes, including homeowners insurance, the idea, and including an HOA in the case of our condo. We're really trying to give you an actual composite figure of what does it look like for a well-qualified but low down payment entry-level home buyer to buy these 25th percentile entry-level condos and single-family homes. Now, if we look at our minimum household income required, I actually love this one too. This is figuring a scenario where there is zero other debt, meaning you have no debt and you were just buying a house. Of course, we know that isn't realistic for some people. So understand if you have student loans, credit card payments, car payments, lease payments, that these numbers will be higher for you. But based on the minimum household income required, you see we're around $86,000, kind of has been hovering in this range for our single family homes, and you're around $65,000. It's actually a drop for our condo buyers. And my favorite thing about this really is to kind of let people know that while it can seem very difficult to buy a home in Southern California, and it is, I don't want to diminish that in any way. It's definitely not impossible, especially in a dual income household. I think these income figures are definitely something that's attainable for a lot of different households. You don't have to be rich to buy a home. You just have to be very careful with your money. And so that pretty much completes sort of our affordability of housing, right? Our affordability hasn't changed drastically. I am curious to see what's going to happen with those median prices, if they're going to get kind of a big spring bump, which is what has happened in years past in our market here in Southern California. But now I think it's really important time to move on to really what the question of the day is, and that is availability of housing. Inventory, how fast is our market moving? What does market velocity look like? I think if you're a first-time home buyer, that really sort of decides your strategy when you're offering on houses. Do you go over comps just to get it? Do you run that risk on the appraisal? I mean, when do you know really when to double down on that pricing, and when do you know that the market is softening? So let's take a look at those stats. I think it's kind of interesting this week. Some of our stats are newer, and we actually have a couple weeks this time. So this is our 14-day rolling average absorption rate. And what we do is we look at over the past 2 weeks, which helps smooth out some of the bumps. We take a look at how many new homes came on the market, and then we take a look at how many new escrows happen, and we look at that ratio between those two, right? And that is our absorption rate. So if we're looking for a single family home market, you can see that these entry-level homes, we actually took a dive down to 74%. Now, 74% is still a very active market. I would still consider that a very, very much a seller's market. Also, these statistics might be a little bit skewed because we have had a huge influx of new listings sort of temporarily. All those listings that people probably from about the middle of December through New Year's kind of held on to and didn't put onto the market. As we saw those inventory numbers just take a dive towards the end of the year, now is the time of the year that we expect those to play catch up. So in a lot of ways, I'm actually surprised that these numbers are as strong as they are. I actually would have thought our absorption rate would have taken a dive even further. And if you look at our condos, they took a dive last week and then they evened out. This is not changing by that much. And I think as we get farther away from that New Year holiday period, you'll see these numbers give a more accurate picture of really sort of how hot is that market in the moment. Now, if we take a look at our total inventory, and I remember talking about this a couple weeks ago, I said, what we are going to expect to see is sort of a hockey stick-like shape. That is sort of a normal market as we head towards the end of the year and then we come into the new year. And if you look here, that is exactly what we have, right? We've got, this is September numbers, October numbers, November, December, and then now we're going week to week in the new year. And exactly that has happened. Our inventory figures, they took a dive through Thanksgiving and through New Year's, and now they have leveled off and total inventory is actually starting to go back up. But you'll notice it's not rising super fast. And I think that's important to note. I would have expected a more exaggerated hockey stick. And remember, this is our total active inventory. So this is homes, these entry-level homes, 3-bed, 2-bath, and 2-bed, 2-bath condos. Just how many are available, just how many are out there active or coming soon in the MLS. And if we take a look at that, these numbers are bouncing, but they're not bouncing nearly as quickly as I think I personally would have expected. And if you look at our week supply of homes, you can see why that is the case. And so our week supply of homes, what this does is it looks at how many are active, and it also takes a look, over the past 2 weeks, how many homes have gone into escrow and how many weeks do we have? So if no new listings came on the market and we just continued at the same rate, when would we run out of houses to sell? Well, if you take a look at that for our entry level condo, that has taken a huge dive down back into the sevens, which is sort of where we were into the fall. I find that very noteworthy and interesting. So, despite increasing inventory starting to go up, it looks like buyers have totally jumped right back in the game as soon as the new year started. If we take a look at our entry level homes, we see that, that has been a very, very steady number. That hasn't moved around nearly as much as the condos. It did rise towards that end of the year as the market slowed, but now it's starting to dive back down again. I'm very curious to see if that number drops back below that 4 week figure, because I think really that's sort of the line where the market is kind of crazy. When it drops below 4 weeks of inventory, it's kind of every man and woman and or other for themselves. And I think that that really is, sort of that delineation line. Now, finally, we have a statistic that is new for this year. And we actually have a couple weeks of data, so we can actually show a line for this. This one requires a little bit of explanation. This is our 14-day still active percentage. So the way this one is calculated is we take a look at all the homes that were input into the MLS in the last 14 days. So that means anything from yesterday to 2 weeks ago, if it was new in the MLS. And then we look and we say, okay, how many of those are still active? How many of those are still active or coming soon and have not gone under contract or been pulled from the market? How many are left? So when we see this number, and I'll put the screen share back on here, when we see this number dropping, and that's exactly what it's doing, and the condo one is dropping a little bit more quickly. When we see this number dropping, it means that market is tightening. That means more of those homes that just came on the market are getting snapped up and they are not available to write offers on. And I think, if we're trying to look at, is the market getting cooler or is it getting warmer? This really is that indication that says the market is getting warmer. The pickings are getting slimmer and things are moving more quickly, right? And I think that's really sort of what, if you're a buyer out there in the market, that's what you want to know. So, if we're to kind of summarize what's going on, inventory is going up as we expected, which is great news. If you're looking for something in particular, your likelihood of finding it is going up. The bad news is the number of buyers in the market is also going up, and it actually appears like it might even be going up a little bit quicker, right? We're seeing these listings, the good listings that just came on the market, they are getting snapped up faster and faster. So I think it looks like we are going to have a very inventory constrained spring. That is my prediction, unless this inventory level start jumping, or unless the buyer market starts falling and that demand goes down. What are things that could make that happen? Well, I think if we were going to see a huge influx of inventory, we would have seen it in the past 2 weeks. Everybody who held off would have just suddenly dumped their house in the market, and inventory numbers are up, but they're not up as much as I would have expected if that's what's happening. The second thing is interest rates. If interest rates should crest into the threes, right now, remember, we were actually at 2.66% a week ago was the nationwide average through Freddie Mac for a 30-year fix. If we crest into the threes, that could have an effect on demand. Though, and I'm going to caution you when I say this, we have a very interesting dynamic with interest rates in our market in Southern California. I don't know if this applies to other places, but what we notice is when rates are low, and rates are very low right now, if there is a bump and an uptick, we see that there's kind of this, for a week or two, there's almost this like panic buying. People are afraid that they're going to be priced out of the market. They write bigger offers. They write more aggressive offers because they're trying to snap in and lock in those interest rates and that pricing. And then we see the market ease off a little bit right afterwards. So there's kind of this like bump reaction that happens when rates go up, where the market actually gets tighter, not looser. I don't think the rates have moved enough to really indicate that right now. But if this kind of holds out, if the inauguration happens, if this is for a couple of weeks and they steadily head higher, I think we're definitely going to see some of that panic buying take place. Or if there's a bigger jump. Anyhow, thank you so much for watching. We love your questions, comments. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you are watching on YouTube. And of course, if you are a renter in California, we would love to work with you and help you become a homeowner as well. Stay tuned. We got a lot of great videos coming up this year. Also, watch our whole market update, which comes out on Tuesdays, and we will see you soon.